I hereby call to order on August 26, 2024, a meeting of the Town of Hanson Planning Board. Starting time at 6:30 p.m. I'd also like to announce for all those in attendance and those that for this meeting that it's also being recorded for distribution on Whitman Hanson Community Access. Playback times and other related information on this recording can be found at whca.tv. For the record, we don't have anybody in our audience as of yet this evening. The meeting is being held downstairs in the Select Board meeting office. With that call to order, we're going to go right into our agenda. The first item of business on our agenda is an approval of the August 5th, 2024 open session public meeting minutes. What's the will of the board?
Abstaining.
Yeah, no worries.
Make a motion to approve those minutes of August 5th.
Motion's been made by Mr. Cohen.
I'll second it, I'm sorry.
Second by Mr. Kemet. Motion's on the floor, properly seconded, made by Mr. Cohen, seconded by Mr. Kemet to approve the August 5th, 2024 public meeting minutes. Is there any discussion in regards to that motion? Once again, great job with the meeting minutes. Appreciate it from the planning office. Seeing no questions, comments, or concerns,
That's you.
all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed and abstentions. 401, Tony.
Thank you.
Mr. Bernardo is abstaining. He didn't attend that meeting. We have no public hearings this evening. We also have no appointment scheduled. So a few minutes if you want to review the Cannabis Control Commission regulation. We're going to go into that at 6:35. That's item 2 of your packet. Before we go into the 6:35, do you want to give a quick back brief, Tony, to bring Mr. Bernardo up to speed on the recent changes?
Yes. I just want to pull this over to. So the Cannabis Control Commission has adopted new regulations regarding the host community agreement. And they've also created what's known as a social equity policy. And the communities that have accepted or have cannabis manufacturing within their towns, the way the Cannabis Control Commission is trying to work it, they're trying to basically say that all host community agreements are null and void and must meet the new regulations. I believe since there may have been a court case regarding that, where the courts, I believe, have said that no, the ones that exist stay because they were contracts, and then anything new moving forward. But one of the things that has to be done is this social equity policy, and this is a policy that Hanson has to adopt as a community that has cannabis. If we don't, then town will be subject to fines if someone makes a complaint. If someone complains and says you're not in compliance, non-compliance can cost you up to $50,000 in fines. So the last meeting, this was in July, we had Liz Linden from the Tallerman and Mead explain these regulations, and I believe, Mr. Chair, that you were going to reach out to the Select Board to discuss this, because the Town Council had suggested that instead of making this, let's say, a bylaw and going through that process, that the Select Board could adopt this as a policy. And I don't know if you have any status on that.
I think they're waiting for this to come out of our office and come to
Okay.
their office, and I think they're going to have us discuss it during that meeting, whether it can be policy or regulation.
The Select Board?
Yeah,
Okay, so I will send this to the Select Board.
I think so.
So did they define social equity?
Yeah.
They do. Yeah, so in your packet is, there is the, basically, let's say, they had a template, but Town Council went through it and made edits so that it fits Hanson. And so that's what you see up on the screen, and that's really what you have in your packets.
With the time having arrived at 6:35, we're going to continue on our agenda under board business. 6:35, Cannabis Control Commission regulation, discuss the newly created regulation effects on the town of Hanson's host community agreement and the required adoption of the mandated social equity policy. Any questions, comments, or concerns from the board?
Yeah, I am.
Mr.
First one. It says, section 1 and section 2, the town of Hanson will provide, right? And then number 1 says the town of Hanson will enhance marketing and outreach. My first question is, who's gonna pay for all this economic empowerment applicants assistance? Just wondering, and who's that gonna be? You know, like, we can make policy all we want, but the reality is somebody has to execute it. And who is that, and who's paying for it? I think that's a good question.
Thank you. Duly noted. I'm going to be taking notes because I think I'm going to have an appearance with the planner at the select board meeting when it goes to.
Yep.
The other part was to sending this on as a policy or rules and reg change.
Right.
Rules and reg change, or as the town planner was saying, a whole bylaw change. So I think that's probably something that they're looking for us to recommend as a board to the select board, and then we'll present it.
So, like down in section 2, the planning and development department will create a website with guidance and resources for applicants and a list of all required permits, including necessary forms. Somebody has to do all this work, right? And is the state's telling us we have to do this? This, again, it's another unfunded mandate by the state.
Great points.
That's my 2 cents.
If I may make a suggestion, Mr. Chair,
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. Why not?
I can forward this to the select board and we can try and get a schedule for their meeting. And then I think probably a good idea is to, and I think I may have suggested this at the July meeting, it's been a while, forgive me, is to have Liz Linden from Town Council's office also there.
Yeah.
So then she could give a very clear explanation as to what's needed, what needs to be done, and probably, she could probably do a better job, not saying we can't explain it, but she could probably do a better job at explaining it than we can, because they know all the nuances. And then the select board can make some decisions on that. And I can post that meeting as well, in case the other members of the board choose to attend.
And can I just add one other point? It says, the planning and development department will endeavor to streamline permitting for these applicants. That seems kind of vague, right? Like, what does that mean? Streamline, you know, it's kind of a broad term. And it's open for interpretation, and you know, it just seems to me, from a legal standpoint, why would you want ambiguity in your wording, you know?
I think the state's good at that.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think the streamlining part, I think, if I remember correctly, when Liz was talking about it, was more like sort of, let's say you have an appointment and you sort of walk this applicant through all the departments that are relevant, you know, and have meetings, or let's say call it a department head meeting, if you will, of all the departments that they're going to deal with, and try and have a sit down and maybe a one and done type of meeting, you know. There is, like you do say, there is some ambiguity. There, you know, they do have their regulations. They have put out a book,
Yeah.
but still, it's like anything else. Yes, there is
But
ambiguity.
that book's not referenced in this,
Right. This document is specifically for. The book is just saying, hey, here's a guide as to what we want to see in, and then you have to sort of work within that. And that's what
Right.
they
So-
give you a template, and she adjusted the template.
So
But yes.
what I'm saying is, you got all this wording, right?
Mhm.
And you've got this book, right, this mysterious book that's not even mentioned in this legislation. So, you know, somebody could say, well, the book, you know, but it's not there. It's not something you can get your mind around, like, this is exactly what I have to do. So my next question would be, what if 6 people of, you know, who are, you know, privy to this, right, could show up all at the same time and expect the same treatment? And who's gonna staff that situation? You know, that could put a huge strain on the planning department or whatever department is in charge of that.
Absolutely.
So, I just, you know, I can only stress that, you know, there's a financial implications to the acceptance of this.
Yes. definitely.
considerable, actually.
Yeah, and yeah, there's been a lot of feedback, a lot of discussion about it. It's sort of, from what I've read, the CCC pretty much has gone off on their own and said, this is what we're doing,
Yeah.
and that's that. And, you know, other entities within the government are trying to reel them in and say, you can't just go off and do this. And their
Right.
attitude is basically like, no, we're doing it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, again, I think there's been a court case regarding the existing host community agreements as still being valid. And because what they want to do is basically say they're null and void, and that they don't have the authority to null and void these contracts. These were contracts
Yeah.
between the town and an entity.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a court that has to null that contract, not just the CCC, because they,
Yeah. Well, I did go on the website and I looked up some stuff and, you know, I see their point, right? But what does the town of Hanson or most other towns have to do with how this equity has to be straightened out somehow? I get that, right? But why is it on the responsibility of the town of Hanson to, you know, I don't know where I'm going with that, but
They're putting it down to all the towns, so everybody that has it has to adopt this equity policy.
Right.
So they're trying
No.
to smear it out.
I get that, but, you know, but they're asking us to do something to solve some problem that was not created by this town, and those financial implications just doesn't seem to me like, I don't know, I think the state's gotten off the rail when it comes to, you know, you want this, you want that, but, you know, when it comes time to help with the schools or more money for the towns to do things,
Yeah.
it's,
Pound sand.
yeah, exactly. There's no
it's a-
money, sorry.
You said it right in the beginning, unfunded mandate.
yeah, I think,
All right.
excuse me. I
So I'll
think
get off the soapbox, I just wanted to make that point.
Well, to your point, if I may, Mr. Chair.
no, go ahead.
Is I've found that in the last few years, sort of like, let's say DEP,
Yeah.
they're trying to get away from overseeing regulations to just going to enforcement. And I think that's probably what they're trying to do here, where they're just saying, okay, here's regulations, you as a community, it's your job to have these regulations and do things, but if there's some kind of enforcement that is needed, that we can step in, we'll do that. Or they're chasing people. Like the DEP is, you know, a big thing for them is now is chasing people that violate the Wetlands Act.
Mhm.
They're not interested in necessarily, okay, you know, notice of intent comes in, yeah, okay, look at it, 2 minutes, stamp, good, you know.
Yep.
They're more interested in chasing, so I think they're more interested in enforcement versus overseeing regulations. And I think it's probably similar to here, is that they're saying, okay, here, these are the regulations we want you to do, here's the law, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big fan because of the fact that they're just going off the rails, like you said, and it's just like, you know, the CCC is just doing what they want, and they're not being reeled in.
Yeah, I'm having a little trouble grasping my head around it too. I'm trying to be open to it, and I understand that we have to adopt it. But the demographics of the town don't really match up with what we're talking about. And then on top of that, we only have one grow facility. We're not talking about 4 or 5 different retail establishments as other towns might have. So I agree with the concerns of Mr. Cummings. And what do we have to take a vote on this? What are we really looking to do? Just discuss it?
Well, yeah, we have to discuss it now and then, you know, make some, we can add to this. We can't take away from it, we can add to it. Is that correct?
Right.
That was my
I
take on
think what the,
Right, can't restrict it.
yeah, I think what the idea is similar to a zoning bylaw, if you will.
Yeah.
The planning board is now going to say to take this policy and say, okay, take it to the select board and say, okay, here's what the state is saying, and here's town council to explain it to you, and here's what town council is saying that you need to do, and then if the planning board has to do something, you know, I think if the planning board has to do it as a bylaw, then you're looking at, just like any other bylaw, public hearing, you know, go through the whole process that we go through any other bylaw amendment.
Yeah.
If it's a policy, she was saying that, you know, we'll say an easier process to have in place without having to go through all those steps.
So just to clarify, are we saying here that if someone is more socially equitable for this business, but less qualified on everything else, they get preferable treatment? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm gonna try and paraphrase as best I can. It's, so if a applicant who falls under this policy comes into town, and let's say another applicant who comes into town but does not meet the policy, that first applicant is the applicant that needs to go processed first, and once they're up and running, then the next applicant could be taken care of. If you have multiple applicants that fall into this policy, then I'm not 100% sure. I'm guessing they all have to sort of go, and you have to sort of help them out as best you can. And streamline, and like Mr. Kevin said, streamline website, different languages, you know.
Well, this pretty much says here, this section says that you, as a town, right, probably you, has to notify them that, we're willing to have these people come to town, and you have to let the Cannabis Control Commission know that you're gonna do that. So there's a lot of mandates in there, requirements, and again, who's gonna follow them, you know?
And then on top of it, the town is going to have to accept some kind of policy, whether it's a bylaw or a policy. Because if not, non-compliance opens us up to somebody complaining, and you're getting hit with $50,000 fine.
Right, and so, somebody else brought up the idea that, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought, I didn't mean to interrupt you, go ahead.
Is this similar to like a package store? They want to operate them in the same traffic?
Well, from what I've read, this is to assist. It's kind of weird the way they write, it's to help folks who might have been in communities that were affected by the laws regarding cannabis prior to cannabis being legalized. So now it's sort of being able to help them out. You know, I don't know if it's like, let's say you're a guy that maybe dealt in cannabis prior to it becoming legal, and, you know, what you were doing then was illegal, but now it's legal and you can become a business owner. I'm not sure, but it's weird sort of how some of the language is a bit odd. It doesn't quite make sense. But then again, I'm not an attorney, so maybe it's more legal speak than anything else.
But if this was a liquor store, right, and you had someone who was, had a felony conviction for something, right, he wouldn't be able to get a liquor license.
Right, that's right.
Right? So why is it all of a sudden now we write all these rules, you can't do this, you can't do that, but if you're from here or there, or your skin color is this, then you don't have to follow the rules. And that irritates me. I don't know about anyone else, but, you know, if you really think about it, it's like we should all be equal, whatever, you know? Why are we having special treatment for people who are actually have felony convictions?
Well, I
Just
can't.
throwing that out
Yeah,
there.
I can't speak to
You know?
the felony convictions. I don't. You would think that if that's probably something that you wouldn't be allowed to, you know.
Yeah.
But so I think it. Well, as I said before, probably the best next course of action is for us to get this to the select board, and
One of the things that I would like to do, Tony, if you could highlight right there where it says, under V, on the bottom of the first paragraph, whether the license applicant is part of an area of disproportionate impact as identified by the commission, or 6, a majority of the licensed applicant entity is comprised of individuals from Black, African American, Hispanic, Latino, or Native American or Indigenous descent. I myself, I would like to ask the board if you agree to recommend having that also say females or disabled veterans.
How about everybody in general? Like, I know there's probably a few white guys that may have had a felony for marijuana as well. Why aren't they in there? you know, so, I mean, it's calling out specific, and I wouldn't bring it up if that wasn't what was being said, is like, you know, it should say anybody that's had a felony conviction for marijuana in an area, should get the same treatment. So it just seems, I don't know.
I just know doing a lot of the EDI training,
Yeah.
equity, diversity, inclusion training.
Yeah.
I know that the groups that they've mentioned, and they continuously leave off females and disabled veterans.
Yeah.
So I myself, I personally, being a disabled vet, I'd like to see that up there. You know?
Yeah.
So that's the group that I represent that continues to get lost.
Yep.
Well, just to piggyback off of that, we have to take into account the sentence before where they're talking about the majority has to be that minority group that's stated. So basically, if you have 2 or 3 business partners, 2 out of the 3 would have to be the minority
Right.
listed.
Yep.
If I also, Mr. Chair, if I may, I would recommend, because it's been, at least, we're looking about 8 weeks. It might behoove members of the board to go back and listen to the minutes of the July 8th meeting when Liz Linda did the presentation, because there may be some things that, you know, she may have said that were,
Do we have to have this shovel ready for October?
there was a date. She did mention a date, I think it was February 2025 or something like that, that we had to be,
Well,
we had to be in
Go
compliance.
back to those minutes.
Yeah, we'd have to go back to those minutes to double check that.
I don't even have to go back to those minutes, because I remember I specifically asked some of these questions to her.
You did.
And her answer to me was, well, that's what the state wants, so that's
Okay.
what we have to do. So to me, that's not an answer. It really, you know, to me, I was kind of irritated with that, as a matter of fact. I know these people are smart and they're lawyers and everything, but to me, just because that's what the state wants, we just have to like accept this and
Check
that's
the
it.
minutes.
You know?
What's the punishment for non-compliance?
If someone complains that you're non-compliant, and we know there's folks out there that will just file non-compliance complaints,
Mhm.
you have $50,000 fines, you know, and you,
Complaint?
it could be per complaint, I would think, and you get kicked off,
And
yeah,
plus the
you
language
get
is
kicked off the
ambiguous.
list, and
Right?
you get in trouble with the state. I'm sorry?
But the language is ambiguous, so, you know, if the guy comes to town and doesn't get what he wants, so he calls the Cannabis Control Commission, right? And the language is so vague that, you know, how can you avoid the fine? Because all he has to say is that you didn't do this, so you didn't do that, because there's no clear path that you should be taking in order to comply with this.
Well, I would hope that this being their template and that our town council has given us hopefully good legal advice,
Mm.
that what we're providing is something that's not gonna get us into trouble with the state. If someone makes a complaint, as long as we're compliant. No.
Sure. Mr. Ellis?
Aren't these all under the jurisdiction of the selectmen, select people, select board?
Yes, the select board is involved in this, yeah.
Why do they need a bylaw from us?
Well, you can do it, because if you look in the zoning bylaw, the marijuana section falls under the planning board.
I know, but nor does the package stores. They don't have anything to do with it. We don't tell them where they can put it, can't put it.
Right, but because you have to accept, let's say, a form of this language, either you're going to accept it and put it in your zoning bylaw, under your marijuana section, or you're gonna put it as a policy under the select board. And if you put it in that zoning bylaw, then you as the planning board are a entity that can submit zoning amendments, and you also happen to be the entity under the zoning bylaw that issues, that deals with the site plan approval of these marijuana
Put
stuff.
it under rules and regs.
Yeah.
Default, we give that control over to select board, just like you're saying with the alcohol businesses, that they're able to handle
No, we never did that. That was done after probation.
that. Right, we can do that now with this.
Yeah,
Um,
but then when you go to town meeting, we're going to point
I'm
at
trying right now.
You won't have to,
presenting
you
it.
won't have to go to town meeting for it, because we're giving that control over to the select board to make those changes.
Okay.
We don't have to go to town meeting.
Then
One more question.
Maybe.
if I can. Where it says as defined by the commission, is it not even up to us to make the change? Like, because I would love to see
May.
the women or.
Yeah, we could, I was saying, we can add to this, we can't take away from it.
Okay.
That areas of disproportionate impact
2020.
defined by the commission, when you look at, if you go to the triple Cs, they
Fine.
talk about that area. That area is, you know, I'm throwing this out there, don't quote me, but I'm throwing out, it's like Jamaica Plain, or, you know, there's a suburb in Worcester, or, so they've identified some areas that they term as areas of disproportionate impact.
Mr. Chair,
Same thing, one way or the other,
if I may, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair, so
whether it's male or female.
May of 2025,
That's what we have until then?
yeah.
So, May 2025. So I've got everybody's questions and concerns captured. Tony, we can get Tony to get us on to the select board's recommendation for discussion, maybe have Liz Linden there at the same time. I could present and put forward the concerns, Kevin, if you want to attend, or anybody that wants to attend. Tony can present it as put it in as a, you know, a meeting of the board, so anybody can attend. But so, action from the board, the chair requests a motion from the board to have the town planner act to place us on the agenda for the select board as a super board type meeting to have a further discussion to be able to bring our concerns before the select board here on the town of Hanson.
So moved.
Motion been made by Mr. Kemet, seconded by Mr. Cohen, for the town planner to act in getting us on the agenda for the select board to have a super board discussion in regards to the town of Hanson cannabis social equity policies. Any questions in regards to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. So look out for that coming up as a notice from the town planner. And we can post it, and if you all want to attend, please attend. If not, I'll at least be able to get this on board and bring forward a lot of those questions. Moving on, we're going to go on to the Economic Development Supplement. Discuss supplement in accordance with Mass General Law 41, Section 81D. Item 3 in your packet. Town planner.
Yes. So in the subdivision control law, under the master plan section, it states that any community that is applying for state grants is supposed to have an economic development supplement on file with the town clerk, and that it can be one page, and you have goals that you discuss regarding industrial commercial development, affordable housing, and preservation of parks and open space. So I checked with our town clerk, and Hanson does not have one on file. So I created one and basically used language that came out of the master plan. And this is an organic document, so this is something that can be pulled out every 6 months, every year, whatever the board feels it should come out, review it, make adjustments, and then just file it with the town clerk. So under the industrial commercial development, I explained what Hanson has, where they are, and what the goals are. So if we look under goals, growing the commercial tax base over the long term, encourage growth that belongs in Hanson by giving incentives to the commercial industrial zones and business districts to create opportunities, revitalize Main Street business corridor along Route 27, including underutilized properties, consider expansion of the privately owned Lockwood Industrial Park and town-owned Commerce Park on the East Bridgewater line, target economic development strategies to capture jobs among the existing regional labor force, broaden Hanson's revenue stream by encouraging a diversity of tax-generating entities that will add to the community's desirability. Again, the majority of this language was taken out of the master plan. Very similar to affordable housing and the goals. I'll just go over the goals quickly. Establish a municipal housing trust, which I think is something that Hanson should really consider looking at. adopt the local initiative partnership, which is something I'd like to work on, which is a state program that encourages the creation of affordable housing by providing technical assistance to communities and developers who are working together to create affordable rental opportunities as the town and developer jointly apply. So this is what you may have heard under 40B called a friendly 40B.
Yeah.
So in essence, the town and the developer sort of enter into I'm going to use the term partnership, if you will. And what happens is you have better control over the project. So developer gives a little, the town may give a little, but in the end, everybody walks away, hopefully with a project that they're happy with. Continue to maintain its housing production plan and work with the state to create a mandated 10% affordable housing stock. Work with the planning board and staff from the housing authority to increase housing potential to meet housing production plan. Consider subsidized and modestly priced studio apartments and single room occupancy units for one-person households with low or moderate incomes. Home ownership units for people within the income range established in Chapter 40B. Increase opportunity for veterans and senior tax relief programs to keep the most financially threatened residents in their homes. The last section talks about preservation of parks and open space. Again, I'll touch on the goals. Acquire or create permanent protection on open space that holds the highest conservation and recreation value to the town. Conserve land that promotes the protection of surface water and groundwater protection. Continue creating a linked system of open space, trails, and greenways for the benefit of wildlife and humans. Improve public access to passive recreation, information, and parks through various media. Continue to maintain a list of Chapter 61 parcels that the town may wish to conserve should they come out of temporary protection. Implement the Camp Kawani Master Plan. Continue to maintain and expand recreational opportunities through the update of the existing master plan and open space and recreation plan, as well as creating site-specific management plans. Seek funding to begin implementation and construction of the High Street Park located at the former Plymouth County Hospital site. So, if the board finds that this document is satisfactory and votes on it this evening, then I will file it with the town clerk and also put it within our files.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, I do. I have a
Mr.
couple.
Kevin?
My question is, some of the ideas that are in here, right, probably or most likely going to be affected by real communities, stuff that the town's prepared to deny, right? So that's going to have a large impact on the available funds for this, because a lot of these funds are going to be from the state. So is it my understanding that mass housing is part of that as well? So from a grant perspective.
Mass housing does fall under the one-stop programs. Yes.
Right. So if we don't accept the rail, right, all of these ideas here go out the window, because there'll be no grants or funding available from the state for this. So the only source of funding that could possibly pay for any of this, right, including the housing production plan, is the CPC, right, which has a total bucket of less than $1.5 million, which is slowly eroding away with projects, that upcoming projects. So that money keeps going down rather than up, right? So this is again, it's just and I know this isn't coming from the state, but it's like, if we accept that, it's great, right? But we don't have any resources to support any of this.
Well, the thing is, it's not that the subdivision control law is just saying you have to have this, if you apply for state grants, you have to have something like this on file with town clerk.
Okay.
That's all they're stating.
Okay.
They're not saying how you have to fund it or if you have to fund it or anything. It's just, at this point, any of the state grants I've applied for, no one's ever asked, but also it says it in the subdivision control law, so I'm just trying to keep it compliant that if someone did ask, well, at least we could say, hey, we do have an economic development supplement, here it is,
Right.
you know?
Yeah,
So-
that makes sense. I just thought I wanted to throw that in there. It just seems, again, I keep seeing all these things like, let's do this, let's do that. Let's create affordable housing, and then the state's saying, if you don't take on the rail zone, then you're not gonna get any money for any of this.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Anyway, I'll stop.
The chair would entertain a motion to favorably adopt the economic development supplemental to the master plan as written.
So,
Motion's been made. Seconded. Motion been made, probably seconded by Mr. Ellis. Any discussion in regards to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed?
I'm gonna oppose it.
Any abstentions? 4-1, Tony, for the vote. That will be adopted. You're gonna put that on file with the town clerk.
Yes.
Moving on, discussion of planning department policy and procedure handbook dated July 1, 2024. This is item 4. Town planner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I was able to do some more research and try and come up with I believe Mr. Kemet had concerns about some type of board member conflict resolution. So doing research, I did find some language for different types of boards, and so that is what I've used here. That allows for, if there's a conflict between, say, members of the board, what would take place. So for instance, there's 3 paragraphs here on the first page. So the second paragraph, if disputes among planning board members begin to interfere with the ability of the board to effectively carry out its business, the chair or vice chair will be responsible for managing and resolving those conflicts. If the board chair is party to a conflict, the board vice chair will take on the responsibility. If the board vice chair is party to the conflict, a neutral board member will be selected to fulfill this role by the planning board during a public meeting in accordance with the open meeting law. The board chair will review any disputes and provide an opportunity for the board members concerned to represent their positions. Every attempt will be made to resolve such matters expeditiously and fairly. Any recommendations regarding resolutions of such matters shall be brought to the chair or vice chair for approval, and the ruling of the chair or vice chair shall be made during a public meeting and shall be deemed final. Should any board member refuse to abide by the ruling, the planning board may table the matter pending determination of possible disciplinary action. Such action may include formal or informal disciplinary action afforded to the planning board under Massachusetts General Law or the Town of Hanson General Bylaws. The second page has a procedure, which is sort of a guide for the chair and vice chair to help resolve any disagreements. There's 8, and I'm just going to read through them if you don't mind. Number 1 is acknowledge the value and importance of divergent views in informing decision-making. 2, practice and encourage good listening skills, understanding, and respect. Clarify the ground rules for effective communication. Confidentiality of discussions, allowing others to have their say, listening to understanding, group ownership of the problems and solutions, focus on issues rather than personalities or personal attacks. Number 3, assist the parties in defining the issue. State what you understand to be the substance of the issue and seek agreement between them on a clear definition of the issue. Number 4, seek agreement of the objectives, outcomes, or decisions sought by placing this item on the board agenda. Number 5, assist the parties to identify and expand points of agreement. Number 6, assist the parties in identifying why this issue is important to them rather than encouraging more debate on who has the best solution or idea. Number 7, paraphrase or summarize the discussions repeatedly until they have reached consensus on points of agreement and disagreement. Number 8, encourage both parties to suggest options for resolution or compromises. Seek agreements on the compromise. If a resolution is identified, check with both parties to see if it is acceptable and will allow them to resolve the matter. Consensus around the issue may not always be possible, but should be a goal. Number 3 is, page 3 is a form, if any of the members wish to fill out a form, which then can be handed into the chair and the vice chair. And that's what I have based on the research that I have found.
So where did this come from, you know?
It was like a board of directors. When I did the research, the biggest thing I could find was a lot of it was for like boards of directors, when there's conflict resolution within a board. And I looked at the language and the one and Kim helped me out with doing research, so we both sort of attacked it and found what I thought was pretty good language and said, okay, I think this is sort of along the lines I think that you were hoping for. And if not, I mean, we can make adjustments.
No,
But-
it comes close, but I have some like, questions about, like, if, let's say the chair and the vice chair are in an agreement that the person who's got the problem is the problem, then what's the solution for the person who's, looking at the chair and the vice chair and saying, you did this and, this is not right, and they say, well, we're the vice chair and the chair, so we think it's right, let's take a vote, and everyone takes a vote, so there's one person sitting there, aggrieved, so to speak. So how does that work?
Well, I think that's the whole idea is that if that person's willing, then the next step is, like I have,
To do the form that's on there?
well, then the next thing is, the disciplinary action afforded the planning board under the Massachusetts general law, the town of Hanson general bylaws. I suppose that the next step that the person being aggrieved would probably seek some kind of resolution that way. So maybe through the general to the select board,
That's right. There's an appeal process. Some of this discussion also came out from the Attorney General's office in regards to a recent issue that we had that was brought into, executive session. So like some of the conflict resolution stuff was talked about this, a good way to try to develop this. One of the things that's good about this is, and I'm hoping this goes favorable, is that it goes favorable, and then Tony's allowed to also spread this around town hall, not only for our board, but for other boards as well, especially the land use boards.
I just had a question. Would this take place in public session, executive session, or outside of planning session?
that was one of the questions I was gonna have for the board,
Yeah.
okay? Because I have that this is taking place in your public meeting. Now, obviously, if you go into executive session, you have to announce that in public meeting anyway.
Right.
Now, that's up to the board, whether, and again, this is a draft, if you wanna mull this over a little bit. Because this is, I know that you've had a couple days to look at it, but if there's something you wanna mull over, whether or not you wanna do this in executive session or on a public meeting, okay? Because I know that obviously, if you do it in a public meeting, then it's out there in the realm. And how does a board look to the public if they're fighting within each other,
There should always be an executive session.
you know?
And
So-
there's a way in the executive session entrances, one of those is, we did it ourselves, one of those is to be able to enter an executive session, to be able to have these kinds of things that are not out in the public.
So what I could do is make some edits
Yep.
that will, instead of public meeting, it'll be an executive, let's say this type of resolution would take place, or conflict resolution would take place within executive session.
Yeah.
So in the second paragraph, though, it does mention the board chair is part of the conflict, right? Then the vice chair would take over. But if the board chair and the vice chair are both party to the issue, so then you're saying it goes to the selectmen.
Well, I have right now a neutral board member,
Okay.
so we could add to that either a neutral board member or to the select board.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping it never comes to any of this. I'm,
Right,
You know,
right.
advocate.
No, because the other thing is, I was gonna add, but I'm not sure how the board would feel about it, because the next thing I was gonna put was, if we can't resolve the conflict, then we go to Thunderdome. Two men
I like
in, one
that,
man out.
Yeah.
So you want to omit a neutral board member and add a select board member, or the select board chair, or?
Well, I think, how about you, I think you should leave a neutral board member, and or select board member, I suppose you might wanna leave that up to the person aggrieved.
The person agreed, that sounds good.
And the only other point I think I would make is that it could involve a disagreement over an audience member or somebody of the public.
That's a
To be
different,
sensitive to that.
that's a different agreement.
That'd be a different.
Yeah, that's a different,
Yeah.
a different,
And what I like about it is it doesn't stifle people's lively debate.
yeah,
And I
correct.
think that's important because, it's
Yeah.
easy to disagree,
Right.
Right?
I
But
mean,
when does it come to the level of, somebody being treated poorly by someone else on the board? Because a lively debate, right, there has to be some flexibility in that, because people say stuff because they're, it's a lively debate.
yeah, I mean, that's why in the first paragraph, it says constructive disagreements between board members may take place on occasion in the heat of debate.
Yeah.
However, these disagreements should not degenerate into serious conflict on issues or between or among planning board members. The purpose of this policy is to outline how conflict between planning board members should be resolved.
I like it.
I think it should be, if you're going to use an extra person, if it gets to that, which is a shame that it would get that far, but I think it shouldn't be somebody on the board. I think all of the selectmen, because there's too many people committed, like John's wife is on the on the select board.
You could have a conflict.
Conflict of interest, stuff like that, and talking about it. I think it should, if it goes that far, that something can get out of control, it should go to an arbitrary person like a town council. But the town council doesn't want to get involved either because they deal with the selectmen and different boards and things like that.
Yeah, but there's
So the best thing to do, I think, is if you're going to do something like that and get somebody, an individual, you should give a call to conflict of interest and see if they have any ideas on how to handle situations that get out of control like that.
On the state
I
ethics.
think that's already handled, because, if there's an appearance of a conflict, there is a conflict.
Right.
So if the arbitrator for an issue, say, between you and myself, would be, if my wife were to arbitrate that, that would be a conflict of interest. She would be able to do it, right? And the law already covers that. So all you'd have to say is, this is a conflict,
Well, we
and
can-
it's resolved.
We can also incorporate that, a neutral board member,
Without
a
conflict.
a select board member, so long, or a select board member, so long as no conflict of interest exists.
Sure, there you go, that's perfect. Yep.
Yeah, but you really can't do it that way because of the fact that, somebody is a friend of a friend and someone, there's too much in family here to be able to get a down and out.
Neutral.
Right. You
Yeah.
need somebody neutral that's not even here.
But I think that, we're getting into conflict of interest stuff, and that's already been covered. There's a help desk for that. There's all kinds of resources available, so if somebody feels aggrieved and they don't like who's been chosen to solve that problem, that, the Board of Ethics would certainly weigh in on that.
Yeah, that's the reference to the Mass General Law.
Yeah, see, that's what I mean. It's like, so I think, instead of getting into the weeds on it, I think it's important to keep it to the point where there's already rules, laws, and regulations of ethics. Why would
Then
we
it'd
want
be
to
easy to go to
recreate that?
them.
Yeah,
And
just
then
go
the
to
other
them.
side of the town.
And they'll resolve if there's a conflict of interest and it's clear and concise, they're gonna say, no, you can't do that because, for obvious reasons. So, I don't know if us adding conflicts and resolution stuff at that level, I don't think makes sense.
All right, so we got a neutral, or it's a board vice chair, as far as going, a neutral board member.
So you could file
Could
an
you-
ethics
could you-
complaint.
could we pull in somebody from the AG's office as a moderator or mediator?
I'm not sure that they would get involved.
I don't think they would.
I don't think they would get involved, because I think they would say that's that's something you should be handling, yeah.
Did make the determine that, like under, Dawn's example, right? Like, if my wife would be appointed for that, I mean, everybody in the room would be like, wait a second, that's a conflict
That's
of
a
interest.
conflict of interest.
So I don't even think it would happen because of the conflict of interest law already in existence. So I just think that, if that started to happen, I think people would be too happy if, somebody with a conflict would be solving a problem. It just doesn't make
Yeah,
sense.
it's not just an example of your wife. Your wife, I probably would recuse herself anyway, we know that.
Mhm.
but it's the friends of the friends and so on. This is a tight community here, and you got one against the other and all the other stuff. I just think it's better all around, just to get it that out of here and let them make the decision, somebody that's not tied to the town. Town council doesn't want to get involved because they deal with other boards, and they don't want to be showing side, what would you call,
Favoritism?
favoritism, yeah.
But I would think as attorneys, their job is to follow the law, you know? Because I mean, you could say it, I'm not sure if they have any conflict resolution places, because realistically, most of this conflict resolution had to do with more like boards of directors. I couldn't find anything regarding, let's say, planning boards or select boards.
Again, I
Yeah.
think a lot of it, you know, if you look at the ethics stuff, right, a lot of it's covered, because if somebody does something that's, you know, an ethics violation, then, you know, then you call the ethics and
Right.
it's straightened out, and they'll make a decision and a determination, and then you come back. You know, but at least it would be, you'd have that clear understanding that if you feel that, you know, whatever resolution has been suggested is a conflict of interest, then certainly you'd be able to bring that up and resolve that before you continue, so.
We could make Kim,
Most of those
we could make Kim
conflict
the,
of interest people are all attorneys. They work for
Sure they are.
the government, so
Yeah.
they got a good background,
Attorney
that's
of
all
the
I'm
day.
thinking.
But they're not gonna come to Hanson to solve
Well, what we could do is we could add a line here at the end of that second paragraph. If a conflict of interest exists,
the existing conflict of interest laws.
if a conflict,
Can't be resolved.
if a conflict of interest exists, do we have this, Tony? That town council would be contracted for a 1 hour arbitration session?
that's getting into the weeds.
Yeah.
We can just say the town council will be asked for advice or.
Let's put it this way, I think it's this. Either you're all gonna get along and you're gonna be, no, either you're all gonna get along and find a way
Where
as,
you going?
you're either gonna find a way as men to figure it out and sit down and get through it, or if you've gone that deep and that far, we're beyond this resolution solving any problems.
So it's time
Th-
to
this-
go find something else to do.
Exactly, this means, this will mean nothing if you're that, if it's basically
Yeah.
like I said, if it's basically Thunderdome, 2 men in, 1 man out, then the planning board has some real big problems. You know? That's the whole thing.
If we
you
go,
know?
I want to defer to your tenure here. If we go back to the 2014 issue, was, I think it was Snow Street, where everybody was on.
What do you mean?
Was it 2011 or 2014? Was it
Yeah.
2000?
It was 2011.
No, I know you weren't involved with it, but do you think something like this would have helped at that time?
Well, that's pre-existing non-conforming, and that's all in a different,
No, I know, but it
and all that.
seemed, going back and listening to those, we're reading those minutes, it seemed like everybody started kind of imploding.
well, yeah, they started threatening with the attorneys, and
Yeah.
that's how they get the approval, because the people that were on the board at the time.
So the full resignation was about the retention of attorneys as opposed to,
Right,
okay.
that's why they turned around
Yeah.
and town council said, well, you do what you want, like they do all the
And got
time.
up and left.
And, yeah,
So it seems like even contacting council's not gonna
Right.
matter much.
Yeah, I mean, if you as a board and members can't sort of find a way to talk it out and say at the end, okay, look, we may agree to disagree, but as a board, we still need to work together to get things done, then fine, you're gonna get through it. If you're not, then this doesn't matter. You're talking about going to attorneys and.
This
you know,
just gives anybody that's on the board a map of how to
Yeah.
get to that, so that we're gone and everybody that's on the next board, 10 years from now, they, start having an issue. Well, this is here to give them a roadmap.
Right,
of how to get
this will be
through
part of that handbook is
And
to,
hopefully,
Yeah.
it'll spread amongst the town boards.
yeah, well, look at it now, I mean, it's been resolved. Your board resolved, I guess, because not unless I get written up for something I'm
No.
aware
Yeah,
of.
what the point though, Don, is there was no clear path to that. We had to kind of scramble around and figure it out. We did it. We
I
got
threw a lot of
through it.
white hairs over that. Look what happened to Tony.
I know.
Lost it.
So this is just a roadmap, that's all. Okay.
Yeah, so this is, if that situation ever arose again, here's a way for you to sort of work through it. And I think that's what John was looking for, something similar to that. And
Yeah.
hopefully we hit that
I think you.
with the edits that you'd like to make, Mr. Chair. And if you make those edits on that paper there, if you could just pass that at the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
So that you could sort of work through it, because I think in the end, like I said, if you can't work together, then the whole town's got a problem. And if anything, the citizens should have a recall
Yeah.
and throw you off the board.
So motion to approve with edits.
There's a motion on the floor to approve favorably with the edits that we're going to make, which would be a neutral board member or select board member. We're going to strike public meeting and make that executive session where applicable. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion in regards to that motion?
Yeah.
Mr. Cohen?
So when would this be implemented?
So the board votes on this tonight and is good with it. So like the next meeting, I'll bring the handbook up, because now we can make this part of the handbook, and then it would get implemented as soon as the handbook was approved. So all it is just a handbook for the department, you know, and guides for the department. So like I'd said previously, if for some reason the department there's cuts and, or, you know, something happens, you as a board have, or the next planner or administrator says, they have a guide to go by, and then also, you know, and if for some reason, you know, if for some reason there's no staff, but at least the chair has to step in, or you each have to step in and work the town hall for a couple hours, you have a book to refer to know what to do. Yeah.
And the other thing too is, in a sense, it would become part of the job description. You know, like, the new planner would have to, look at that and understand it and, implement it if necessary.
Yeah, I'm trying to help guide, because the day I started, there was no one in the office, there was no handbook.
Right.
And as you know, with a lot of companies, there's handbooks, there's employee handbooks, there's policies. So I'm trying to do that here with this department, because, you know, at least we have something to work with. So to answer your question, Kevin, as soon as the handbook is approved, then it would come into play.
So, good job, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pretty good. That was an interesting solution.
There's a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. Any other further discussion?
No.
Who first?
Seeing none, all those in favor signify. So the edits you'll see will be neutral board member or select board member. And then anywhere where it says public meeting will be changed to executive session.
And before you vote on the handbook, we'll have those edits made. We can bring it back up so you can read it. So you'll get it again.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Well, I'm gonna see what Tony comes back.
Oh, all right, so we want to abstain?
I don't think that'll make any difference anyway.
401 to Tony. All right. Pass that down, please, to the town. Moving on, we have a few different ZBA applications that came across the planner's desk. You'll see those as items 5, 6, and 7. Any questions, comments, or concerns in regards to the 3 applications? I'm going to read those while everybody's reviewing those. Item number 5, the Hanson Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing on August 27, 2024 at 7:15 p.m. Hanson Town Hall, Meeting Room A, second floor, in the Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, in the Town of Hanson zoning bylaws, Section 6B6G. and sections 8D on the application of Eric Hall to allow for the addition of an in-law apartment 22 foot by 20 foot at 92 J Street, map 89, lot 214, Hanson's assessors map. Property is a resident A zone. That's our first one. So number three.
I do have a comment on it.
Mr. Kevin.
My comment would be that I think we should make it clear to the zoning board of appeals that whatever decision they make, they have to notify the planning board in writing as to the reasoning for it, so that we can understand as we create new bylaws going forward that, we shouldn't have this issue where, the planning board, the Board of Appeals was, arbitrarily handing out appeals for the rules and regulations. I think a clear understanding of why it's required under the bylaw now, right, for the zoning board of appeals.
Right.
So if they approve this project, they should have in writing to us as to why they feel that the bylaw was agreed, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, town planner.
They do file with us their decisions. We do get a copy of their decisions.
Okay.
If you'd like me to bring forward those decisions when I receive them,
Yes.
I can
Absolutely.
bring
Are
them
they-
forward.
Are they with detail?
They basically, it's their decision, what they, the evidence, and it usually, depending on the project, it could be a page, 2 pages, 3 pages, and then just what their vote was. And there are sometimes comments. So if you'd like, what I can start doing is, let's say these 3, if and when I receive a decision, because Virginia does give a copy of the decision to us, I can bring that to the meeting.
I think one of the positive reasons for implementing that, to make sure that it happens is, if there's something that continuously comes up, right, that's not covered under the bylaw, and they have to do a variance for it, then maybe it's time for us to be able to look at it and go, maybe we should change the bylaw so that that doesn't happen. So that's one of the good reasons. And the other one is, sometimes people, for whatever reason, think that it's okay to just approve it, So I think to have, the bylaw says it clearly in writing that they should explain that to us, then we should know, so that, again, we can.
Yeah, their decisions we do get copies of, and I can start bringing those forward on any of these applications, and that way you can see what the decision was.
Right, because, it's easy for us to say, I don't like the decision, we should appeal that, right? But, if the decision, if you can read it and understand it, and you might say, yeah, I would probably do that under the same circumstances, or maybe I wouldn't. So, because there is an appeals process, right? So, I think it's important for us to make sure that, we understand why they're making the decision that they're making, because they're going against what we've said. Like, there's been examples where, we've made a decision and then it was appealed and went to ZBA, and, it wasn't a good appeal.
Whether that's an approval or denial.
Yeah, yeah.
The only comment I have on this 92 J Street, that I actually have a letter that's gonna go to the ZBA. This plan is not stamped by a registered professional land surveyor. And under 250 CMR, any dimensions, any distances from the building to the property line, that has to be a land surveyor's stamp. So this plan is stamped by a registered sanitarian. Registered sanitarians can design septic systems up to 2,000 gallons per day, but they're not land surveyors. So the good part is there's plenty of room for this addition,
I've noticed that, yeah.
but that's my recommendation to the board, that, and what if they approve it, or when they approve it, that they require that an as-built be done, and that be stamped by a registered land surveyor. Matter of fact, this particular person, I'm not going to mention names, but this particular person, could get in trouble with the Board of Registration if they found out this type of work was being done. They're cracking down on this type of thing, and 2 reasons. One, it says in 250 CMR, and 2, it's sort of, let's say, taking food off the table of land surveyor, So I don't begrudge anyone making a living, but this is something that should have been stamped by a land surveyor.
Good catch, Tony, thank you. Any other questions in regards to 92 J Street?
I just have a question just about the
Let's go.
Board of Appeals in general. Is there a stand-in for the vote on these?
Not as of right now.
No.
They're a two-member board, which,
Okay.
my understanding, if I'm reading the zoning act correct, they need three. They need, and without three, even an approval is a denial. Because they need three.
An issue on all of these.
Yeah, they could be.
Yeah.
So, can I ask a question?
Mr. Kemp.
Before we move on? So, you know, I know, we have a new bylaw, right, allowing these, additions for, you know, family members or whatever,
The in-laws.
or in-laws, but, what if the in-laws pass and they just rent it to somebody, anybody, they're able to do that, is that true?
If someone I know the way the bylaw reads for in-law apartments is if it gets sold, the new owners have to come back to the ZBA to basically reapply for the special permit. I don't believe we have any language regarding, if there's a passing of the person who lives there, if it's family, what happens.
Yeah, like,
so-
can they- I guess I'm just wondering, like, you know,
Could they rent it out?
rent it to someone like who's a
pro-
non-relative?
Probably
Right.
could, because
Yeah.
we don't have anything in the bylaw to specifically limit that, and I'm not sure you could.
And, so I guess my other question is, the parking for me this parking looks horrible. You know what I mean? It's not conducive to, you know, this is like moving to Quincy and, you know,
Yeah, but let's put it this way, they have a lot of room, so I suppose they
Yeah,
can park on the
okay,
grass.
yeah. And this is, the square footage of this is in keeping with the bylaw?
Yes, I
And if
believe
that's
that's
true, why does it have to go to the Board of Appeals?
because in the residential zone, it's listed as a requirement under special permit.
Okay.
It's not
Right.
considered as of right.
Tony, can you pull out, you know, the trifold handout that they have on the website about in-law apartments, the quick trifold, have you ever seen that?
No, I can't see that.
Mr. Ellis, you had a question?
No, I was just gonna say that on the bylaw for, in-laws was put in by the bylaw committee years ago.
Yes, a long time ago.
Right, and the whole theme of the thing is that they can come in, there's a deed restriction which go along with it, and it had to be a relative, or not to be able to rent, because they were worried about rentals going in residential areas where you could get anybody coming in. So it's not like today that they're looking for additional housing because they can't get housing.
Right.
And rentals they can't get, but that's the way it was set up before.
Is that on the ZBA's?
If you pull up Google, just Google Tony Hanson in-law apartment, or in-law, what was it?
So what's the
Tony
difference
Hanson
between?
in-law. What did I
Sorry,
Google? That's all right, I'm trying to think of what the,
Because one thing I could do is I can actually pull up the bylaw.
Tony Hanson in-law bylaw, I think, and there's a quick trifold that the ZBA's and the building department has.
Give me one
It's like the second link or down on Google.
Give me one
Unless they,
second.
relax the rules or something. That's the way it was set up.
'Cause, you know, like on this one here, for Woodbine Ave, right, it shows the property line, I don't have my glasses
Yeah,
on.
wait,
Like,
don't move on yet. Don't jump the gun. That's a good question. There's a handout that they had years ago that they gave out in the building office. It was a trifold.
And I pulled it up earlier today.
Well, I can tell you
Or you
that.
can pull up the bylaw.
Yeah, here's the bylaw. So, this is where it begins for in-laws.
It's a housekeeping unit. Ooh.
Owners must occupy either the principal residence or the in-law apartment. There should not be more than one in-law apartment within a single family. Design and appearance and structure. Maximum 900 square feet, additional entrance, principal residence, and the in-law shall be serviced in one common unit. Should be at least 2 off-street parking spaces for the main dwelling and 1 for the in-law. It shall terminate, okay, so, single-family dwelling with an in-law apartment shall terminate upon the following events: sale of the premises, residence by any person other than a family member related by blood or marriage, and either, there you go, so there it is, right there. Violation of any special permit restrictions imposed by the Board of Appeals.
So I got a question for you. With the accessory building, right, is that the same? Like, it has to be a relative for an accessory
Our
building?
detached,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it says that the owner, doesn't have to be relative, but the owner has to occupy one of the two buildings, 18 out of 24 months of the year.
Well,
Entertainment.
I figured we'd ask that question at the very end, but maybe we'll get into the new state law
We will.
versus our.
Keep going down, Tony. Yeah. Yeah, they have to come back within 90 days of the sale.
Yeah, right there.
so what's the litmus test for like setbacks and so forth like that? Because I'm looking at this Woodbine Avenue.
Don't
31
don't get before the courts.
Oh, I'm
We're
sorry.
going to talk about this.
So,
Keep going down, Tony.
Yeah.
So this
And then we get into our detached ADUs.
correct.
Right.
Do you want to keep going on that? Mr.
No,
Chair?
no,
Okay.
go back to the in-laws. All right, so any other questions for 92 J Street?
No.
Or any other, not questions, any other comments for 92 J Street? Okay. Moving on to the next, which is an application for a special
So
permit.
is there any vote there to just defer to the zoning board?
Well, I'm sorry, I do have a question.
I think
J Street.
You want to do it individually, or you want to do it as a consent?
No, I just have a quick question on the J Street.
All right, we'll go back, so we'll go back to J Street.
Yeah, and it's related to parking, right? I see a driveway, but I don't see any width of the driveway because you'd have to have sufficient parking for, I mean, what's everybody gonna line up in the driveway? I mean, this doesn't seem to be conducive to
smart cars.
community living. There you go. Drive over the grass, I don't know.
Pretty much.
And was the comment, was the comment that we wanted to see the stamped by an engineer?
I'm gonna put that comment in my letter, which
Chair would
then
entertain a
is.
motion to recommend to zoning board of appeals the 92 J Street with the comments from the board, comments, concerns from the board in regards to parking, as well as the town planner's astute point about engineering stamp,
Surveyor's stamp.
survey stamp. Any other comments?
So moved.
Motion been made,
Second.
seconded. Any questions in regards to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0, Tom. That one will go on with parking and engineering survey stamp questions. Moving on, application for special permit filed under section 6BG, 6B6G, sections 8D of the Hanson zoning bylaw by Brittany McLaughlin for an in-law apartment on the second floor at 410 Woodbine Avenue, map 3, lot 30. Before we go into discussion, I want to disclose to the board and to the public, I am a resident of Woodbine Avenue. I'm not in a butter. I have a disclosure on file with the town clerk's office as well as the town planner's office. I do have some comments and concerns in regards to this that I'm going to speak about, but in no way, shape, or form is it derived by me being a resident on Woodbine Ave. Open the floor for
Should we
discussion.
vote to accept that?
No, that's just a disclosure.
Oh, okay. Well, disclosed, we should vote whether we accept it or not.
It's for the public, it's not for you. Mr. Gemmell, you had some questions.
I did, I'm sorry, I did them out of turn, but I'm looking at the setback, right? And I can see it up on the screen now, it's 31.2 feet. And I thought we had setbacks to, this as well as any dwelling. So why would we be entertaining a project that's only 31 feet from the property line? And, I don't know if the ZBA is gonna bring that up. I think we should certainly watch this closely to make sure that, the other bylaws involved complied with. And I'd want to see a valid reason why we should give a variance to someone for 31 feet in the back of the house.
To that point, John, it's not just 31 feet away from the property line, it's a wetland line in the back too. It's just wet.
Don't even get me going.
So-
Yeah, sure.
Tony, you mind bringing this parcel up in GIS? And at the same time, we should also look at the other parcel out of fairness, we should look at any of these in GIS.
Is this a pre-existing non-conforming?
That's a good question. I think that's an ambiguous question that's never been defined.
It's a wet.
Yes, it is.
Never seen it.
So if it was there before zoning,
Which portion?
Huh?
Which portion?
Well, somehow they allow them to keep building.
Yeah.
So if it's already non-conforming, you know, make it more non-conforming. But my other comment that I would like to make and give to them is that, if that wetland line was delineated more than 3 years ago, it's invalid. So, where's the stamp that says that's an accurate wetland line?
I think
I
they
think
do.
that's a bylaw requirement.
I think the note is right here. Location of the wetland line is shown was taken from a plan entitled As-Built Site Plan 410 Woodbine, prepared by Arthur Borden, dated March 18th, 2024, signed March 25th, 2024, and on file to Hanson,
Yeah,
Board of
but
Health Department.
See, the problem with that is it shouldn't, first of all, it shouldn't be with the Hanson Health Department. It should be, the Conservation Commission should accept that wetland line.
I can only think that they did. I do not have any evidence whether they not.
So I guess that would be my comment, is where's the supporting evidence to support the idea that that wetland line is accurate and within the bylaw?
There's something I want to bring everybody on the board up to speed on, and I was talking with Tony about this earlier on. So you notice that this lot is 3-33, right? 3-30,
30.
3-30.
So that's definitely
It's
non-conforming.
3-30, and then there's that lot 3-32. For the board and for the public to know, 3.32 is a town property.
Yep.
The reason why I have some knowledge about this is because I live in the neighborhood. And that 3-32 town-owned piece of property has been a discussion in my neighborhood consistently since I've lived there.
This isn't on Wood Property.
This is what we would call Woodbine Ave Extension.
Oh, okay.
Those of us in the neighborhood, we don't call it extension because we don't,
Yeah.
they are part of us.
Do you see the stuff down there?
We have.
Let's go down there, they got more trucks and cars, and that's the one with the garage on the bottom, and the Gambro.
That's on the right, yeah.
Oh, that's the.
Well,
So that right corner where the driveway is the property line.
that's the property line.
So, I mean, is there permits on file to support the fact
Well,
that?
the property card talks about the encroachment on that 3.32. So Tony was saying that there's some discussions in the town hall about that 3.32.
Mhm.
And I would think, Tony, if you bring that back up again, I would think that a way to resolve this whole issue is that 3.32, which is a town-owned property,
Just sell it to them.
right, goes to the tax office as a recommendation from the planning board to get rid of as a land of low value. And divide it maybe with a 60-40 split, sell off, if there was an interested party, divide it, and it would take care of the setback issue, and you'd never have a problem after that.
Yeah, it would solve a problem. That's like kind of where I was going with that, is like, you know, if that were to be transferred to the two residents on either side, it would solve that problem, because it looks like the one on the other side is built too close to the line as well. So, but to say it has no value, it
No,
certainly
no
does have
value, land of low value. They-
Oh, low
they-
value.
Yeah, low
Okay,
value, that's
yeah.
all off land of low.
So the assessor can assess a price of what it's worth, right?
That's right.
Uninterested third party could determine the cost.
That's correct.
And then the option of these people buying it to solve their non-compliance
Non-compliance
problems will be, yeah, that's a good solution, I like that.
I like this solution too.
Yeah.
They might be more apt to want to do that, to get done with it.
Yeah, I can, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So there is discussion of that, and that may be one of the solutions. I also know that the scuttlebutt is that this particular town-owned property, Habitat for Humanity has an interest in it, because it is an existing non-conforming lot. The third potential option is, my understanding is that town council is involved. And they had asked me as a surveyor, what are your thoughts here?
Mhm.
And I said, well, there's two ways that we would handle this in the private sector. One, you would do a land swap. So you give them X amount of feet out of your lot, and they're gonna give you X amount of feet out of their lot, so that the lots stay equal in frontage and area, so that they don't lose their existing non-conforming status. So the alternative is, I did one not too long ago, same exact situation. And what the attorneys came up with was that encroachment of the house, okay? So that encroachment of the house, in essence, would become a parcel. So the walls of the house would become the property lines, and then parallel to that would be given an easement of, let's say, 5 or 10 feet, so that if they have to do maintenance, they could do maintenance. So the town would give up about, I think it's about 80 square feet of their lot, which would be minimal. But that, you know, you'd have to have the language that, okay, like, let's say the overhead electric, you gotta get that off the property. You're not gonna be able to do anything within that easement other than just maintenance. So there's options out there that are being discussed at, let's say, I have, let's say, G4 clearance, and this is probably G5 clearance, so I'm not exactly privy to all the ins and outs of what's being discussed and who's talking, other than when I'm brought in. So what the chair is proposing is not necessarily an option that has not been discussed. I'm sure it probably has. Because one of the key things, obviously, is this, to be disposed of, it has to be under the 30B, and, you know, you don't want to have a situation where, let's say, you want to hopefully set this up so that, yes, it's only beneficial to the person that needs it, versus someone swooping in and saying at an auction, hey, I'll buy that, you know?
Yeah.
And so, all those options, I think, are on the table, and I can only keep the board up to date as to what the results might be.
Well, can the town sell a non-conforming lot as buildable in the first place? Right? I would
Well, if
assume
it's
not.
an existing non-conforming lot, and the zoning enforcement officer says, yes, it's an existing non-conforming lot, and under the zoning act, it has protection and can be built upon, then it could be built on.
And, you know,
But you
the other
can't
thing,
make a non-conforming lot more non-conforming.
Right.
which is what this proposal for this addition would do,
Right.
right?
That's why I think my proposal to do the 70-30, 60-40 split, whatever, is the easiest, cleanest way to get this resolved. Because I know that that's been a contentious area down there. On top of that, around all of our lakefront, quote-unquote, lakefront properties, from the, you know, there used to be camps from the 30s and 40s, those neighborhoods were already strapped. So I've already heard from Woodbine Ave residents that have already said the Habitat for Humanity thing, but really? Another, where are you gonna stick that? You know, so that, the neighborhood's already congested down there, you know?
So all I can tell you is that, yes, that's the situation, and I can just keep you up to date as to what the resolution is, because I don't believe that there's a resolution imminent that's in discussions.
The other concern that I would have is to pass on to the zoning board of appeals. And this is nothing against the applicant or, you know, the homeowner or whoever it is, whether it's the applicant or the homeowner, I can't remember who's who down there, but I really honestly think that the ZBA should have the fire chief go down and vet the egresses.
Well, you know, Joe, I think, I would take a look back in the Conservation Commission meetings going way back, because I think this came up before,
Yes.
because Habitat for Humanities wanted to put a house there, and it was denied because of the wetlands and because of this encroachment at that time. So this isn't the first bite of the apple.
No, this property as exists, it's been a thorn in the town of Hanson's side
Yep.
since I think 1968.
Yeah.
That's,
Just one question. Tony, if the homeowner went in and asked the selectmen to buy a portion of that lot, that'd be the best way to go, because then they wouldn't have to auction the whole lot off and somebody buy it and build on it.
That may have been done. Again, I was only brought in to, hey, what's your thoughts here? I think there's some ongoing discussions that I'm not privy to,
I
so.
think that was proposed in the past, and the thing that I'm talking about. I have limited knowledge, you know, memory of it, but I do know that this was brought up before, and that I think they tried to take a piece of the land, and they were denied for some reason. I don't know, maybe the selectmen at the time had no desire to get involved, but you're right, I think that is a good solution.
It's good in two ways. It gives them a selectman an out to be able to, okay, this guy's got a bad situation, we can sell him give him a piece of lot to make his lot more accessible or whatever.
Yeah.
And now this takes the other lot probably be not enough to build on it, because you can't take away from a non-conforming lot to make it more non-conforming. So that would eliminate that down there.
But that's not, I think that rule applies to developed land. I think this is undeveloped, low-value land, like you said, and I think the rules might be a little slightly different about getting rid of it, because it doesn't have a house on it, so it's not an improved lot. So
And that's why,
I think that's the wording, and the non-conforming is a.
Has to be vacant.
improved lot.
it has to be vacant.
Yes.
So,
332 is a vacant lot.
right, and it always, for it to get protection as an existing non-conforming, it has to have always been vacant, and and at the time it was recorded or created, it conformed to zoning at the time, it has at least 50 feet of frontage and 5,000 square feet of land area.
Yeah, pull up that 332, I don't think it has the frontage.
Well, it does, because it's actually two lots. These are all like double lots. If you look at the original subdivision plan, each one of these lots were like 50 feet of frontage, and so they're like two each. So the town in essence owns what was originally two lots in the subdivision.
Pull up the GIS.
I would think that whoever proposes, those people that own that house are well aware of this situation.
You're saying the
Yeah.
332 has 50 feet?
This has more than 50 feet. This has, I believe it's like 100 feet.
Yeah, we combine two 50 feet.
To make it one lot.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you,
A lot of them were 2,400 square feet
Yeah, camps.
with, I think it was 50 feet of frontage. Some of them didn't.
Yeah, and the common ownership protection has to be at least, if you have common ownership, same thing when the lot was created or endorsed, that it conformed, and it has 75 feet of frontage and 7,500 square feet of land area. And if you owned 4 lots, you could combine 3 of them. You can't use the 4th one. It's kind of weird, but, and that's changed a bit now too, but that's what the common law.
If that lot was in the hands of a private owner, this would be a lot easier, is that true?
If the town-owned piece?
Yeah.
Yes, if it was, it's not to say that they wouldn't have an uphill battle, but they could definitely claim it's an existing non-conforming,
Yeah.
and we want to try and put a building permit on it, and put a building on it.
Well, the original, there was a very similar issue in town about 10 years ago with a home that was built very much like this home was, where it was, the original was just a rectangle, and then it got blown up, got blown up, got blown up, got blown up, and eventually the select board had it torn down.
Yeah.
So that's very much the same. The original camp kind of style building is that stone facade that you see on there. That was the original size. So there was no encroachment.
So they created their own encroachment. Yeah.
I don't believe that the existing owner created this problem. I believe that it was the previous owner.
Right. But, I guess from my perspective, if you went back into the Wayback Machine to look at the permitting for this.
Correct.
Right, if there's no permit for that accessory side of the building, then it would, in order to conform, it would need to be torn down.
So that's where there was no enforcement of the encroachment. After the encroachment, there was no enforcement after that. That's what happened. So they've been heavy kind of.
And if you notice that this plan here is stamped by a registered professional land surveyor.
So if I may.
So what are you really trying to say there?
If I may, I think we should pass it on unfavorably, because most of our discussion was talking about how to fix it.
Well, the issue,
With the application, it's not fixed.
well, here's the issue. Here's the issue. They're applying for an in-law.
Yep.
And so in my letter, I'm making note of these deficiencies. But it becomes, does it stop the use? Does it affect the use? You know,
If we go
it's-
by, the in-law regulations in regards to egresses,
Setbacks.
and my point about having a fire chief look, yes, I think absolutely we could vote unfavorably because the egresses that they're talking about don't conform to the in-law egresses.
The thing is, if we were talking about solutions from, they might actually have another solution with an accessory dwelling that they haven't explored.
With the proposed egress that they're talking about on their application. The proposed egress is from the back side of the garage.
This is-
coming in.
So what's the regulations for the parking space? Because that's on the property line as well,
Yeah, so there's
right?
4 plus 1.
Yeah,
Right.
but the one is an interior.
But what's the setback for a driveway to a party property? Is that,
There is none.
there is none?
No, you can
That's
put,
horrible.
yeah,
But so,
put a driveway right on your property.
so the ZBA, is it fact, yes or no? Can the ZBA even move on this with these brackish water issues?
I think the ZBA would look at this and say, okay, it does encroach, but does this encroachment affect that being used as an in-law apartment?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because you can't enter the building, as soon as you enter that garage space. Where they're talking about is on the back.
So this is the back, and this is the garage,
Yep.
and this is the interior entrance to the in-laws. So if you look at the floor plan, this comes in, yeah, so this comes in from the garage. So this point here is that point there.
That's right.
And then you come in, looks like a platform, and then you go up the stairs. And then their second means of egress is out the back, here, down the stairs.
I think I missed that. So it's above the garage.
So can I see the section where it says interior entrance,
No,
right? It has the drawing pointing over there.
Yep.
What is that line that's drawn over there where it says exterior? To me, that looks like part of the new construction because it's not pre-existing, right? So how can they go over the line? How can they approve somebody to build something on someone else's property?
I'll be honest with you, I don't know when that in-law apartment was done. I'm not sure if it's new or how old it is. You know?
So,
Used to be the back door.
but what, I guess what I'm saying is like, see, it says second floor in-law apartment.
Yep,
right? And it says interior entrance and it points over at that
Yep.
doorway over there.
yep.
Well.
And
but
you
if
go up,
Look at the square, right, where it shows the garage space
yep,
encroaching on the other side.
Yep.
Well, that section that they're talking about putting, where you got your thing now, right, they would be building, under the same conditions where they would be over the line. Does that make sense? So if that's part of the structure where the words interior entrance are, right, which is from what it looks like to me, that's exactly what they've done, is created that additional space.
if that garage space wasn't there, let's say that was the wall, then,
All would be
and this was proposed,
Yeah.
they would be seeking a variance to the side yard, more than likely.
Yeah, which, I mean, in some instances, whatever. But what I'm saying is that interior entrance area, whatever that is proposed as part of the construction. It can't be done because it's not on the, you can't approve it.
Well, the thing is, it's already,
Construction.
Must be the building.
So you're saying the in-law apartment's already been built?
I believe it's already been built.
But how can you approve something that's on someone else's property, whether it's built or not?
Just over.
Right, so if it comes to the point where they're gonna approve it, right,
Yeah.
they can't legally, because they're approving something that's not even on, the person's property.
And that's another issue with that edge of gravel. They're talking about allowing them to put gravel onto a piece of property that's not theirs.
Well, it is there, they pay their taxes, it's theirs too, you know?
Yeah, I believe this space exists already.
Good thing we don't have control over this.
This space exists, that's correct.
Yeah, this space already exists.
Yeah.
I believe this was somehow maybe a non-permitted in-law at one time.
Correct?
Yeah,
That's correct.
and now they're coming in for a permit for it.
So
So in essence, let's say the new owner's trying to do the right thing.
the
they-
new owner's
they
trying to do
inherited
the
a
right-
problem.
That's right. New owner's trying to do the right thing, but inherited an absolute mess. And probably did, well, I know that they do, because there was people in the neighborhood that wanted, that's like, that's like a no-touch building, you know?
So what's a CONC pad? What does that mean?
Concrete.
Concrete pad for what?
Probably an air conditioning unit, or I don't know.
Yeah, it's on the picture.
Fireplace, could be gas tanks, I don't know.
It could be propane, it could be somewhere out there.
So it's difficult to make it, you know, as far as the use it goes, you're making a good point, but as far as the use, I really have a concern about some of the egress and the way they're talking about, because the building itself and where they're talking about the entryways, it's all divided up, it's a hodgepodge. And it's just the way that the people were allowed to keep building on it, so.
I mean,
So would the planning board say defer to building and fire?
Yeah.
I built on a house down there, I think it was White Street, and I bought the lot. It was vacant, never been built on. Went out there, started working, right in the middle of it was right on the property, my property, was a septic.
Oh, no.
It was a septic from the
that
house
happened
that
on
was in
Ocean Ave. What
front.
happened on Ocean Ave? For Dean Anderson. He has septic on a different piece of property. Oh, I don't want to bring up the
That was the name of it. All right, so yeah, so,
But the attorney, one thing I wanted to say was, I went to talk to my attorney, he said, don't do anything, just build a house.
Oh, boy.
what do you say, Tony?
That's good
Building-
advice.
Would it fit?
Defer to building and fire?
Building, fire and conservation, right? They gotta get cleaned up, that comment about the wetland line. The chair would entertain a motion that the zoning board of appeals consider the applicant at 410 Woodbine with a deferment to building, fire, and conservation for clarification before they make a decision.
I'm sorry, what was it?
That's it.
I was thinking over
The chair would entertain a motion to defer the applicant at 410 Woodbine to the zoning board of appeals with a clarification by the ZBA through building, fire, and conservation.
So moved.
What? If you want to do for the guy, don't you want to buy some of the lot?
Have the ZBA get clarification through building, fire, and conservation,
Oh,
all the
okay.
things that we discussed. Motion's been made by Mr. Kemet,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Cohen. Any discussion in regards to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0, Tony. I entertain an additional motion that the board recommend that the town planner continue the discussion with the tax assessor's office in regards to whatever equity split it would be for 3-32 as a land of low value release.
So moved.
Motion's been made,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Cohen. Any discussion in regards to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's 5-0, Tony, as well.
Really got into the weeds. on that.
Approve that for Orlando Lopez. Okay, moving on, we have, sorry, Tony, let's go back. Do you mind pulling up the GIS? Can you pull the GIS for that 92? Where I lost my train.
J Street.
I think you're 92 J Street. Just want to make sure that we don't have any like funky things.
Yeah, well, it's a
Another
non-conforming lot.
driveway that we didn't know about, or?
Well, that's still a non-conforming lot, right? And the
It is.
issue with that was the parking, first of all. You know, what size is that?
What size is the lot?
Yeah. 30,000 square feet. No, that's actually close.
Yeah,
Right. 30,884 square feet. So that's a regular sized lot, right?
But there's nothing just outside that we need to have any concern about. There's no, gas tanks or alien landing zones.
It's residency.
What are they doing with that?
That's.
Yeah,
the
it's
requirement I
residency.
wanted to talk about first.
So let's see. No alien, unless you look at that as potential.
Yeah, there you go, they can land right there. Helicopter landing pad. All right, so that looks pretty clean. All right, then moving on to the next, Tony, would be 1,000 Main Street. Oh, that's as a business. So the third and final, Town of Hanson Zoning Board of Appeals is going to hear public hearing August 27th, 2024, 7 PM. Applicant of Samantha Norse for a special permit under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, and Town of Hanson Zoning Board Bylaw, Section 6HB and 8D, to allow for the addition of body art at 1,000 Main Street, Unit 111A, map 42, lot 56. Property is located in a flexible overlay zone. Body art.
So do we have a bylaw that speaks specifically to body art? I know like the tattoos and
I was
stuff.
gonna say, what is that? Is that tattoo? Is that a tattoo shop? That's a
Yeah.
tattoo shop.
Yeah.
It's just a different way of,
Yeah.
well, so it's a body piercing, it's different.
Is it tattoos and piercings?
I would, yeah,
That sounds
yeah,
like-
body art is
Body
tattoo.
art, mm-mm.
Yeah, it's just tattoos. And she might do, they might do piercings. That falls under the, I believe, select board and, well, you get the ZBA involved. I'm not sure if select board's involved, but I know Board of Health will be involved for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is unit 111A, is that on, that's on the front? I think it's on the front right side of that building. It's the Cranberry Building.
It is,
Yeah.
Oh, so this is the Cranberry Building where the popcorn thing used to be?
Yeah, and Hanson Express?
This is multiple businesses.
Yeah.
Is there any requirement for cameras, or if they're keeping cash in a safe or anything like that? I'm not sure. Or things of high value, like some businesses have instruments that they use that are highly sought after and stolen. I don't know if this is the case or not.
I don't think it's
know,
required.
but yeah.
So is this at the front of the building? 'Cause if
I think
you
it
look
is.
at the
Tony, can you pull it up on the-
entry, key entry.
On a ground view?
Hmm. 1,000 Main.
I almost don't think there's anything for us to comment on because it's a pre-existing building, you know, and it's really in the purview of the ZBA
Let's
to
try 800 Main.
approve that along with the Board of Health.
No? Okay. You called it up. Where'd you?
Well, I call it up,
1,000 Main? All right, so. Let me do this for a sec. Give me 1 second, Mr. Chair.
window.
I
Yeah,
think the Board
that's-
of Health is a good
It's on the bottom
suggestion.
floor.
You know, if a hand sink is enough, or if they need any sort of sanitation type stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty regulated.
Yeah. I don't know a lot about that business.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that it's the unit that's right at that right-hand corner.
so that's where that guy that used to do exercise stuff, and he had a little store there
Same
for a
spot.
while, so it's that
I
same
think it's the same
spot.
spot.
So that entrance that we're looking at is actually on the side, not in
Yeah,
front,
that's right.
right?
Yeah.
Will there be a ability for somebody to go in there from the main door in the front as well? Just curious, I don't know, it's none of my business.
Well, they have one entry,
There's
and that's what?
an entry off the hallway, isn't there? Right there.
Yeah, it says hallway. Yeah.
It's a,
So it's an interior?
It's a, I think it's a community bathroom in that building, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks that way.
Any comments, questions, or concerns from the board?
No, I have none.
Entertain a motion to recommend favorably to the ZBA.
So moved.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any questions in regards to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mr. Chair, if I may, who made the motion and who
Mr.
seconded?
Kemet and Mr. Cohen seconded.
Thank you.
And thank you for bringing some more business to Hanson.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the last for our zoning board application review. Thank you for the time for that. Questions, comments, concerns, and discussions. That was really, a really good bout of positive debate.
Board member subcommittee updates. I don't have anything for open space. OCPC will not be meeting until September. I know that Tony and myself are thankful for that. It's been very thick. Mr. Ellis, High Street Park Committee.
No, I don't have anything to add to it right now.
Mr. Cohen, Economic
Somebody
Development.
might.
Right now, we have Hanson Day set for September 28th, 11 to 2 at Indian Head School, rain or shine.
Nice.
No other update, just because we did cancel our meeting, we need to reschedule. That's about it.
Mr. Kimmett, Community Preservation Committee.
Yeah, I do. And I'll let Tony talk to it if he wants to. He's got some, he came to us for a couple of things and those were both approved.
You want to do that during your planner update?
Yeah, well, I can do it right now.
Okay.
So I went
Sounds
before the Community Preservation Committee, asking for funding for two projects, one at 0 Phillip Street, which is town-owned property, looking for a sum of $955, which is 10% which is a 10% match of the grant, which is $9,550. That grant is being provided by Mass Housing. That contract is between Mass Housing and the consultant, which happens to be VHB. And so that's between them, and we just have to kick in at 10%, which is the $955. CPC was kind enough to approve that, and we're moving that forward to town meeting with an article. Second was funding for the Open Space and Recreation Plan. As the board may know, the Conservation Commission uses that Open Space and Recreation Plan as a way to seek grant funding from the Department of Conservation. We were looking for, I believe it was $40,000 was the number, and the CPC is kind enough to approve that, and that is also an article that's being moved to town meeting.
So can I make a quick comment about
Yeah,
0
okay.
Phillip Street? So one of the things that came up in the, in our CPC meeting was, you know, will this study look at the possibility of taking land, well, not taking, but, you know, either purchasing or looking at whether we could take some of the land privately owned abutting this property so that we could expand the scope of this project to be a little larger than 2.8 acres, whatever it is. So I know, I think it's worthy of discussion. I'm sure Mass Housing would be more than happy to look at that. I don't know if that's true or not, but, you know, I guess, you know, the size it is now is limited, right? And most developers that do affordable housing want 20 units or more
Yeah, so
for their profitability. We went through that with the Beckins thing as
We
well.
did. Yep.
So, you know, Mass Housing is of a mind that, you know, like small projects like that don't even come into the radar. As much as, you know, it's more in keeping with the community to keep it small, it won't really go that far. So that's why I thought, you know, seeing if part of this study could look at that.
Well, this right now, the cost is looking at the site as far as the resource area that's on the site.
Okay.
Once we establish the resource area and it's put on a plan, we see what type of viability the site may yield. If we see that it's limited or not viable, then I think that that's a possibility is the next step, because Mass Housing does look at acquisition of potentially looking at maybe some abutting properties that are currently vacant and reaching out to those landowners to see if they'd be willing to sell
Okay.
some land to the town through Mass Housing for that property. So, as I like to say, is like the first step out of 100, and right now it's getting that wetland line established and putting it on a plan.
Mr. Benonato, Drainage and Stormwater.
Nothing this summer.
All right, that's it for our board subcommittee updates. Moving on, town planner update. Town planner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So first item, we'll go back a little bit to Mr. Ellis and the High Street Park Committee. The High Street Park Committee had asked me to, well, two things. The planning board had asked about, let's say, a peer review of the project, so I've reached out to a few different companies. I have received estimates for reviewing the project and the drainage and specifically, but the project as a whole, but the drainage specifically. And also, the High Street Park Committee asked if I could look at costs, let's say, for playground, kitting out the playground. So I've reached out to a few companies, and I believe it's 4 estimates upstairs of the cost of what the cost would be for putting equipment in the playground areas that are being proposed. So we have those costs, and I'm going to be, when the park committee meets again, I'd like to get before them to go over that estimate information, because obviously the peer review is something that's going to have to come out of their budget. And once I meet with them and they discuss it, then the next step after that is I will look to be bringing that project before the planning board, and we'll have a public hearing and so forth to just, so once, I know the park committee wasn't meeting in August, and you're maybe going to start up again in September, so maybe sometime in October I'll sort of be bringing that to the planning board. So that's where we're at with the High Street Park. Pratt Place culvert replacement, so I want to give the board a progress update. So actually today, they were out there doing soil borings to determine what the soils are and what type of soils are under there for the, let's say, soil compaction. So when the whole idea is to create a prefab bridge. And so they have to look at what the soils are beneath to be sure that, it can sustain the weight of that bridge. So they've done the borings. I am going to reach out to the abutters. We did get a call from one of the neighbors. The engineer on site did have conversations. I want to try and put out more information and keep them notified of what's going on. So I'm preparing, let's say, a standardized letter that I'm going to send to all the abutters on the street and try and keep them up to date if there's any further type of activity that they can be aware of what's going on. Also, once they get into the design phase and let's say a preliminary design is complete or somewhere between preliminary and definitive, they're obviously going to have to go before the Conservation Commission, and I want them to bring it before the planning board, so there'll be public hearings that the residents of that street will be notified and be aware and be able to come in and view the plans and voice any concerns. The next is 0 West Washington Street, so we've had some progress there. The wetland line was established, and based on the wetland line, there's been some concept plans that were drawn up. So this is a slide presentation that was done for myself and the Mass Development. So I'll just get right to the nitty gritty. So this is West Washington Street. This building here is the current location of the water department. This area here is the wetland. And so what they've been able to fit is an access road side saddling the easement, parking, loading, drainage, staying outside the buffers, and they have a building roughly of 25,000 square feet. They obviously, this is preliminary, but this is, they also have to look at septic, but that's what they figured they could achieve. What's that?
Pump it right into the water department.
Well, the next slide is there had been discussion. It's possible that sometime in the future, the water department may be looking to either expand or relocate.
Nope.
And if that was to be done, this project, let's say in phases, a second phase is potentially, if that site was incorporated, you could potentially fit a 30,000 square foot building there with parking and drainage. So these are conceptual plans. I'll want to bring them to the board first, and then I'll be passing these also along, let's say, or presenting them to the select board. I was hoping to get them shown to the Economic Development Committee, but unfortunately we didn't have a meeting. So those are the two concepts for the site. It's a 25,000 square feet, it's a pretty good sized building.
Yeah.
So I'm happy with the fact that even though it's just one, it's still a good sized building
Yeah.
that could lead to a potential business moving in there. and increasing the revenue in, under the business base.
Can I go
Commercial
down a
industrial.
stupid rabbit hole?
You could easily, oh, hang on, you could also condo this building, which is also done, let's say, in this building here, which is in the industrial park. This is actually like units. And so there's, let's say, we'll say sublet, if you will. So, and go ahead.
Yeah, so just to go down a stupid rabbit hole, that exact scenario that you have on that slide comes to fruition. Would those two properties fund the DPW moving with highway to your concept?
The two together, right?
Yep.
You going with that?
Would they move that, would that fund putting those two departments together on,
Would the sale of that property, in other words, would the proceeds from the sale of that property fund a potential other project within town?
yes,
Would
would it be enough?
it be enough? I guess it's tough to say, and the only reason why I say that is, obviously, we're trying to come up and say, okay, we're trying to do as much as we can so that when the town, let's say if the town decides to move this forward, dispose of it, which is what I'm hoping that the town will decide to do,
Yeah.
it'll get appraised. And so we'll have an idea of what we could get for it. And then obviously that number is something that the town would try and get. And then what could you do with the money after that? Hopefully move it to fund something else.
So that's what I'm wondering, if that came to fruition, if the amount of that came to fruition, went into the general fund to be able to fund the combination of highway and water up on Liberty Street through your, and we would have a small, I think with that, we would have a very small bond borrow.
Yeah, it's possible. I couldn't tell you what the cost, I'm not sure it would cover you would definitely still have to borrow.
Yeah, but
But,
we wouldn't have to do an override.
yeah, I mean, I don't know at this point what you could, what the cost would be.
So can I ask a quick question? Those two lines, right, that follow the wetlands, one of them is the 50-foot buffer where you have your hand on them.
Yep,
And the further one out is 100.
yep.
So in Hanson, the wetlands bylaw says that commercial property, the no-touch zone is actually 90 feet.
Yeah, well, this 50, that's 100, so that's probably 90.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm just pointing
Yeah.
that out.
No, they were aware of that, because we went over the zoning,
What's that corner on the top left away from that property line? Yeah, down the corner on the top line.
John, that 25,000 foot on that
Of the
corner,
building, sorry.
that corner's built up on stilts.
Okay, that works?
It's just a 10-foot out stretch.
I'm sorry, Kevin,
Yeah, I was just saying the distance from the top left corner of the building to the property line.
right here?
Yeah,
Um,
is that like 15?
I think it's 50.
Setbacks and
Yeah, because, yeah, we went over with the company that's worked on this is VHB as well. And we went over the zoning quite extensively to
Yeah.
figure out what the setbacks.
Oh, the parking lot exceeds the zoning. You can see it right there. There's two little peaks there that go over the 50 foot. See what I'm saying?
This is the lot next to the DPW.
So you're saying you would require a variance?
Again, yeah, for the parking area, because the building touches the 50 foot, but the proposed driveway, the parking lot, whatever it is, encroaches on the 50.
That's the,
So
no, that's what's going to happen.
I think there's some variances that are gonna be needed for this.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, it's preliminary. It's a
Oh, yeah,
start.
no, I get that.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna pick it apart, because it's just
Yeah.
on paper, you know?
No, it's a start,
No, it looks good. I'm not complaining.
Tony, that's also the adult overlay district, right?
I thought that was in Mr. Ellis's backyard.
Just on Saturdays.
Well, you may have,
You get special permit from the select board. You're-
I mean, not just picking.
No, but that is the adult overlay zone, right?
Yeah,
Is it?
Yeah, the industrial park.
yeah.
What, really?
Just put it out there.
Well, I don't think we're looking for that kind of
Is
industry.
that in the marijuana zone?
It is, that's what I was gonna say, you might be just in time for the equity law.
The 30,000 square foot building, right? Whatever cost, I know Joe was talking earlier about, potentially using the funds from that, the sale of that building You'd have to include the tear down of the existing building.
Oh, yeah, raise
Yeah, you have to demolish the old.
Yeah,
building.
see, that actually is outside, that lot is outside the marijuana zone, yes.
Can't
that-
we vote to include it? That would
Paul, you're safe.
add to the value.
Yeah.
Because then we could comply with this other thing we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, but it's outside, I mean, you could, you,
It's all overlay though, no, it's it.
that's the overlay, that's the lot in question.
So Joe, if we added that to the marijuana district, right, we could kill two birds with one stone, because then we could comply with that thing.
I'm not going down that road again. I thought the adult overlays in the commercial industrial.
Well, it doesn't show up on our zoning,
Uh,
let's put it that way.
If we can get it, in red. We're a red light district.
So the last item of business,
Yes, Affordable Housing Act.
so, okay, let me,
Way too long.
I got lots to say about this, but I'm not going to this evening.
so, recently, the governor signed what's known as the Affordable Homes Act. There was an advisory put out by Jay Talman from Mead, Talman, and Costa explaining the new law and how it would affect us, or in general. The biggest thing that it affects Hanson is getting into our accessory dwelling units, attached and detached. And what happens is, right now, it's special permit. The new law, which technically doesn't go into effect until February, would allow it as of right. So,
Tony, for the record, do you mind defining as of right for the public?
as of right means that a person could get a building permit, could just walk into the building department and ask for a building permit to build an accessory dwelling unit. Where right now, for them to do that, they have to go through the zoning board of appeals to obtain a special permit. The size, 900 square feet, now it's interesting because this is to qualify, the unit size cannot exceed 1/2 of the gross floor area of the principal dwelling, or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller. Our size is 900 square feet. So don't worry, it can get a little odd, because if you think about it, so if you have a 2,000 square foot house and it's 1,000, and you say, okay, so it's 900. But if you have a 1,000 square foot house, half of that would be 500 square feet. But that wouldn't work, because 500, so I still think it's 900. So 900, I think, is just going to be the number for Hanson.
Yeah, even number.
Yeah. So that becomes the issue, and so we will have to adjust and amend our detached accessory dwelling unit. And and also, believe there is a case of they do not have to be owner occupied is the other one.
Yeah, they've took that away.
Yeah, they've taken away the owner occupation, which we have right now. So,
That's a bad idea.
yeah, I'm not a fan of that.
So you give your
idea.
snowbirds, rent out your main dwelling house and your ADU.
Yeah,
Take off it.
yeah. So, on February,
Here I come.
on February 2nd, 2025 is when this goes into effect. So, on the 18th of September at 10 o'clock, I'm going to be setting up a Zoom or Teams meeting with Jay Talman,
Yep.
with myself and the other land use departments on the second floor, and the assessor, to go over this act, because it also there is an effect on the assessor, which comes down to the non-conforming lots and with the merger doctrine. So we're going to get together, in essence, going to have a seminar with Mr. Talaman, so he can give us the straight, hopefully lay person's explanations of this bylaw, or this law, which then I can bring back to the board. Or if there's anyone on the board that may be interested, it's going to be on the 18th at 10 a.m. when I get that link together, I'm assuming he's probably gonna wanna do it remote. But either way, I can set up a remote link if anybody wants to sort of jump in and
Do you mind
listen.
sending that to me, Tony?
Sure.
So as long as the audio works.
Yeah, I can usually get it to, I usually don't have any issues.
Something that I was trying to figure out reading through this is that a lot of the information that we went over in regards to the ADUs,
Mhm.
it was very nice for the state to take a lot of the local towns and rubber stamp our ADU adoptions and make it a state law, thank you. They've left out a lot of information in regards to septic.
Yeah, they usually don't care too much about that, and the reason,
Five.
and the reason why they're not talking about the septic is because this is under the zoning act.
Yeah.
So Title V covers septic, 48 covers zoning, 41 covers subdivision, so they're not,
So in February,
but we talk about that,
yeah,
you know.
so in February, when this adopts as a state,
Mhm.
so the public knows, they can go back to the states and the public knows. That doesn't mean in February, if you've got a postage stamp for a lot, you come down to the town hall, apply for an ADU as of right, that you're exactly going to get it.
Right, and it's,
Like the neighborhoods down in the Mont Ponce area, nobody's gonna start building tree forts and think that they're gonna be cool and kosher with the law. It's still,
Mhm.
septic is still a heavy regulation in our own town because of Title V.
Well, as you were scrolling, there's something in there that said something about,
and we,
non-conforming lots.
well, we have also that the ADU may be subject to reasonable regulations, including but not limited to site plan review, regulations concerning dimensional setbacks and bulk and height of structure, and may be subject to restrictions and prohibitions on short-term rentals, Airbnbs. So, the town will have at least that still with site plan reviews. And I think that when we look at the ADU bylaw and we work with town council on it, you know, you're gonna have to look at site plan review and say, okay, where's it gonna land?
Right.
Who's gonna look at it? What board's gonna look at it and figure out how this is gonna work out? I mean, right now, it is in the ZBA and it could stay there. But there'll still at least be a site plan review, you know? So I saw that. I'm not exactly the biggest fan of it. They did change, or they added, I should say, they've added non-conforming lots merger. So I'm not sure if all the board members know what the merger doctrine is, but it's basically what assessors do when they take, we'll say, non-conforming lots and sort of combine them, if you will, internally, so that they're one lot and is close to current zoning requirements. But what it says is that another meaningful change to the existing, oh, they call it meaningful, pursuant, so MGL 40A, Section 6, pursuant to which municipality may no longer treat adjacent, non-conforming lots under common ownership in single-family residential zoning districts as having merged if the lots, at the time of recording or endorsement, were conforming as to area, frontage, width, yard, and depth, subject to certain qualifications. To be entitled to the protection of this provision, these lots must contain not less than 10,000 square feet of land area and have at least 75 feet of frontage. Furthermore, any single-family residential structure to be built upon such lot cannot exceed 1,850 square feet of heated living area. And if you look at 40Y and you look at the section of 40R, you'll notice that the starter home districts, the houses are 1,850 square feet of heated living area. Shall contain at least 3 bedrooms and cannot be used as a seasonal home or short-term rental. So at least they're doing that.
Can I ask a question
But-
about that?
What I was going to say is, one question that I have for Mr. Tallerman, and I'm curious of what the state's answer is, the beginning of the zoning act says that you're not supposed to pass any zoning bylaw that in essence affects the inside of a house. So here they are saying it's 1,850 square feet and 3 bedrooms. So I find that interesting.
Yeah, and the other thing that I was just gonna quickly mention is, 1,850 square feet of heated living area, which, you could put up a 4-car garage next to it because
It's not
it's
heated
not
living
heated.
area.
You know, so I think that's
Or an ADU.
Yeah.
So, the last one I think that is interesting and, may not be, this one, I'm curious to see how this will play out. But it's regarding appeals. So the zoning appeals process has undergone changes as well, including by the incorporations of language or measures intended to dissuade dilatory or NIMBY type appeals by abutters or others.
Ooh, that's some serious.
First, the changes to section 17 provide that if the complaint is filed by someone other than the original applicant, appellant, or petitioner,
Oh, boy.
then each plaintiff, whether or not previously constituting parties in interest for notice purposes, shall also sufficiently allege and must plausibly demonstrate that measurable injury which is special and different to such plaintiff, to a private legal interest that will likely flow from the decision through credible evidence. To a certain extent, the foregoing language adds nothing new to the Mass law, but codifies what was previously apparent only following a careful review of years of case law, i.e. the legal standing to challenge a decision rendered by the zoning act requires establishment through credible evidence of a particularized zoning-related injury to the plaintiff. However, the new wording in the statute sends a clear message to challengers that meritless appeals by those personally unaffected by land use decisions will not be tolerated. So that one gets interesting. I'm not, so that could get interesting with,
Well, this is the one that I wanted to talk about, is affordable housing for veterans.
yep.
Um,
Would you like me to read it?
Yeah, you can read it, yeah.
Okay, so affordable housing for veterans. Another new provision added to Chapter 40A applies to municipalities which have adopted or permitted inclusionary or incentive zoning or density bonus ordinances or bylaws. Under this amendment, a municipality may enter into an agreement with a developer for up to 10% of units in an affordable housing development to be set aside for preference to low or moderate income veterans as defined in General Law, Chapter 4, subsection 7, paragraph 43, for the first 90 days of the initial marketing period applicable to these units. Any such agreement does not affect the municipality's ability to receive credit under Chapter 40B or any other law for these affordable units and does not require an increase in the existing amount of affordable housing units required by the municipality. The law does allow municipalities to require proof of veterans' status and income eligibility.
So if you don't mind me just picking this apart just a little bit, I have a couple of questions. So, can the town have more than 10% in a 40B? That would be my first question. And the second one, it says that it only has to be preference to low or moderate income veterans for 90 days,
Right.
which I think is, it's insulting, if you think about it, because 90 days is 3 months, right?
Yeah, so what they're saying is when they initially market the units,
Mm-hmm.
within the first 90 days, that can go to the veterans that say would be preferred, or
So
preferential.
why couldn't it be in perpetuity, I guess, is what I'm saying? Like, if two people show up, one of them's a veteran, one of them's not, after the 90 days, they can give it to the non-veteran, right? But
Correct.
So if it were changed to more than 90 days, then, the preferential treatment for the veterans would be in perpetuity, I would hope. Because, the general idea of this affordable housing for veterans would be so that, anytime that unit gets sold, the first person that shows up that's a veteran should have first priority. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I want to say, I think, I'm not sure, I didn't write the law.
Yeah.
I think maybe their thinking here is, so in the first 90 days, so if in the first 90 days a veteran doesn't show up, then we move on to the next people.
Yeah.
Sort of like what happened with that unit in town where it was a affordable unit and no one from town went after it, and in the end they put it on as a market rate because
Right,
no one was
yeah.
interested in it.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's what they're doing here, or maybe what the thought was, but I couldn't say that with 100%
I think that
certainty.
some of the veteran service agents, the VSOs that are in local towns and local cities, they also have been interpreting this that anytime that unit sells, the first 90 days is always going to be preferential to a veteran.
Yeah, but that's where I'm going with that. That's not really clear in that. This is pretty much, like, by reading that myself, I interpret it as after 90 days, whoever wants it can have it, and that's the end of it. So even if it doesn't say anything about, if it were to be sold, that unit would, in perpetuity, would have 90 days to find a veteran for it. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a problem. Is that something we can amend that at all, or?
Well, that's something
To our own bylaw?
again, so this is, let's say, a paraphrasing by the town council, so we can
Yeah.
find out more information there and find out, if that's something that could be done. If the town
Yeah.
could say, hey, it's,
The
So,
biggest problem you have with all of these affordable housings, no matter what they are, they don't want to come because there's nothing around that they can walk to, and the facilities like that. They like to be in the cities where they can walk and they can get groceries and all the other stuff. They can get medical help and so on. The affordable housing down on Main Street was, nobody wanted them. They didn't want them, so they had to all of a sudden release the affordable ones. And they weren't for veterans, but they were, at the time, they were for over 55, I think, too. But they had to work, they couldn't sell them.
We gotta open up that carnival.
Carnival? I don't know, but then,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we don't have a lot of people that are influencing the Hanson.
now, I mean,
I'll ask that.
this is, yeah,
I'll ask that.
it's not to say that the town couldn't, like with any regulations with the state, you can always add things to be more stringent. You just can't you just can't take away.
so the real problem to me with the affordable housing is, how it's determined what's considered affordable. And, that's to me is a problem, because I mean, like that unit that was in, the one that you're talking about, right? That unit was selling for $325,000 as an affordable unit. Who do you know that is in a situation where they'd be looking for affordable housing could afford a mortgage that high?
Mhm.
Right, because
Yeah, I could-
if their income is low, right, they're obviously not gonna be, able to get a mortgage for 320, because we had two people that came to look at that unit, and none of them could qualify.
Mhm.
And that's why that unit went south. So there's an inherent problem in the legislation itself because of that, that determination of affordability for that unit.
I think it's probably the fact that they use, I believe it's, 80% of the AMI?
And
Right.
80%, which is 96,000 in Hanson.
Right. So,
Silly.
either they have to lower that number,
Yep.
and figure something out, so,
Well,
yeah.
the other solution to that, like with the veterans, right? And the CPC could make up the difference between what's affordable and what's not. You know what I mean? It's actually part of the legislation where, and so my question is, who determines the affordability? Is it the housing authority, or, who is that person that determines whether, like, we know the unit's considered affordable, right? But does the housing authority control, like, I know the housing authority is always looking for more units, right? So, and more people to go into those affordable housing units. So who manages that? And I think I know the answer is the developer themselves.
Well, what the developer does is they have, so for a standard 40B, they'll have a lottery,
Yep,
and then there's the authority that's going to finance it, and you have CHAPA, you have Mass Housing, so whoever the entity is, and then they look at, obviously, the person's income. They have to file all their paperwork and show that they meet the income requirements.
Mhm.
And then if people file all their paperwork, if they meet the income requirements, they go into the lottery.
mhm.
And then it's chosen at random. Though, in 40B, you'll find that there is preference for, let's say, veterans, town employees, teachers, they'd say get the first crack at it, and then it goes into everyone else.
Okay.
So that's how they tend to work the process.
It's kind of complex and confusing because, like, again, we're talking all about affordable, but you know, I don't think that affordable number is sufficient, you know, so.
And if you look at it, the more regulations you put on, the more regulations you're putting on the construction of a home,
Mm.
the higher the home cost is going to be.
Yep.
Plain and simple.
Right. I think I've talked that to death.
So that is the last thing that I have. That's it.
Does anybody have anything for good of the order? The only thing I wanted to bring up, good of the order, gentlemen, is we've been talking a lot about the MBTA zoning over these recent months. One of the things that has been very effective in regards to the town of Hanson's progressions that we've heard from the citizens is the show me question. The state has said that the town of Hanson is going to be penalized because it doesn't conform to the MBTA zoning, and it's going to be penalized for the fact that it's not going to be able to apply for grants, right? That's what we keep hearing that. Recently, it was finally stated in writing, the new economic development bond bill. Did you see that?
I have not seen that.
So the economic development bond bill, what, they had an amendment back on mid-July, they had an amendment that was gone through, and that says, I'm going to quote what they wrote in the economic bond bill. For a program of grants to cities and towns for approved public library projects pursuant to section 19G and 19J, inclusive of chapter 78 of the general laws, provided that grants may be awarded to municipalities submitting applications jointly or through a regional planning agency, and provided further that grants or other financial assistance under this item shall only be awarded to projects within municipalities that have been deemed in compliance or interim compliance with the multifamily zoning requirement in section 3A of chapter 48 of the general laws. That's the first time I've ever seen that in writing.
Is that regarding the library grants?
Yeah, that's where. Yeah.
Yes, so I have seen that.
So that's the only place, and for the public, it's the only place so far that I've ever seen in my research to date on the MBTA, where it's actually been written in a grant application process, where it states that it must be in conformance. But I have not seen all the stuff from the Attorney General's office and all those things. Those have all been strongly worded letters. There's never been anything. So we finally have a proof that, yeah, don't bother applying to this grant unless you're in compliance with it. So that's the first example I've discovered.
I did receive, I think, I did receive from Karen Stolfer, the director of the library, that language or something similar via email.
Okay.
That might have been submitted to them through their consultant.
Yeah.
Because they're filed for, I believe it was a $150,000 grant.
Right.
And
right.
there's a good potential that the language I saw in a subsequent email was, there's a good chance that you're not going to be able to get this because we're in compliance till December 31st, 2024.
Right. Interim.
And that is a fact.
Yeah.
We're probably not going to be in compliance after that, and then therefore that becomes in jeopardy.
Right, right. So there's some entities that have reached out saying that the town of Hanson needs to could do better or whatever, trying to, I don't want to, lack of a better term, sell the MBTA. So it's not our responsibility to sell anything. And then what was fired back was, show us the proof, give us the evidence that we can say to the town citizens that the state is factually going to not give us grants. Up until this date, we've never seen anything. That's the first one. Unfortunately, it's a library grant. That sucks. Feel bad for the library folks, but it is what it is. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention that it seems as though they are now starting to factually put in black and white that the MBTA community's zoning compliance is a decision factor in making
I think there's a lot of weight on what's going to happen in October with the Milton case once it goes before the SJC.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting.
That could also be decades.
Yeah.
Right.
Deals?
Yeah, I mean it's gonna go in October, but obviously it doesn't mean that there's going to be any kind of decision issued anytime quickly. And I don't know so we're still in a, don't know what's gonna happen. So that's all I have this evening for the board.
Last thing we have on our agenda is planning board tentative schedule for Monday, September 9th. Is there a motion to have that meeting?
So moved.
Motion's been made by Mr. Cohen,
I can tell you, I won't, yeah, I'll second that.
seconded by Mr. Kemet.
I will not be here.
Any discussion in regards to that motion? Mr. Kemet will not be attending. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of holding a planning board meeting on Monday, September 9th, 2024, at 6:30 PM here in the select board meeting room, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention. 5-0, Tony. We will have our next meeting on September 9th.